Thanks for
Yeah. So she's amazing. She's amazing stuff. So trying to convince her.
I know. She's so good. Exactly.
That's exactly right.
Well, and she's just so good. I'm doing one with her.
Okay, just for the sake of time, we're gonna go ahead and get started. We are so excited you guys are with us in the room. We're just gonna introduce ourselves and kind of go from there. So I'm Erica Peppers. I am the new co-TL here at Keller Williams, and this is my first class to teach. So I am through the roof excited. Investments, multifamily, hospitality investments, commercial is my background for the last 16 years. And so not necessarily on the single family side, although I managed a portfolio of 145 houses and then acquired about 35 houses after that. And so can definitely speak to some best practices on that, and now learning the amazing world of real estate, how it translates. And so my goal here today in assembling this was to, number one, just educate. How many people in this room, this would be your first investment? And it's okay, let's raise our hands. Awesome, that's what we want. We want every person to feel like they can invest too. And then secondly was in real time, present a real offering of an investment package that is truly for sale. It's on the market, and we know the realtor listing them. So we have both options here today, and we are just super excited. So I'm going to introduce my co-hosts on either side. We have Levi. You want to tell them about you?
Yeah, Levi Skinner. So I oversee and I guess run Adam Grady's commercial division. So we started up in February. And then I'm also an investor. I have short-term, medium-term, long-term, and some commercial property. So I dabble in a little bit of everything.
Cool. And my other co-host?
Yeah, Trey Watson. I've been with Keller Williams for this going into my 9th year. We started buying our personal residences in 2016 and then got lucky with all the appreciation that happened and did all the social media stuff you hear about and cash out and refinance and go start buying properties. We've got Rachel and I own 21 units by ourselves. And then we've got the package that we're going to be talking about today that we purchased with 2 other partners, and we are actively selling. And we've got about 54 properties that'll be in that package that we'll talk about today.
So today we are basically, and we have another co-host, but he got stuck in the airport. So Andrew Chavez from UN Mortgage is wanting to basically partner with anybody who truly wants to purchase a parcel today, or a house, or an asset, or any of the words we can use to describe purchasing it. And he has some really creative financing options available. So we'll make sure after this, we send everybody his contact information from UN Mortgage. And we would love for you to connect with him. He has a lot of creative ideas for that. So kind of just right away, we wanted to talk about why investing is so important for real estate agents. So I'm going to hand off to Levi if you want to dive into that.
Yeah, so obviously in the world of real estate, we're commission-based. We don't have a set retirement. So one of the best ways for agents, and I truly believe anyone, is to invest in real estate. You know, you're gonna have the ability to purchase a house and have cash flow that can help fund your lifestyle, but also you can take advantage of that appreciation if you own it for a long period of time, and you can help with retirement. You know, we have nothing guaranteed. We've got to go out there and basically eat what we kill. So if we can do that and then put that back into real estate, we are going to be able to provide a better life for not only us, but for families, for others. If you know it's important to you to give to the community, you can help change lives through investing in real estate, not just your own. So that's a huge point, and that's one reason why I invest in real estate is I have a big dream for my family, and I want to be able to give. A goal for me is for every kid we have, I want to give them a home when they're 18. So it helps with home ownership, but also if they want, they can refi it for college tuition. They can keep it and run it as a business. I'm going to teach them how to run and read a P&L. So it helps him learn the business and have a business mindset. So to me, that's the beauty of it. It provides provides opportunity across the board for you, for kids, it funds retirement, it gives ultimately financial freedom.
Yeah, I wanna, and I'm exactly what Levi said, is I'm gonna add on to it a little bit. There's a lot of different investing vehicles that anybody has access to, whether it's real estate, simple stock market stuff, investing in businesses, all of those different kinds of things. The big value that's added to us as real estate agents or anybody that's in the real estate world is closeness to the deals. You think of the opportunities, and really the biggest opportunity is going directly to the seller, whether you're a real estate agent or not. If somebody is not licensed, they go knock on a bunch of doors and say, "I want to buy your house." They're gonna find somebody eventually that wants to sell. And if there's an opportunity to buy that property at a discount that needs fixing up or whatever the situation might be, that's the best way to go get the best deal for you. We're in a great position because our job is to go talk to those people already. So if we are doing our job and going to talk to the people that need to sell, you're gonna come across one that we know needs fixing up. And if we're doing the best by them and for ourselves as well, we know that if there's a property that has to be fixed up before it will sell for max value, there's gonna have to be a discount taken off of the price where it's purchased at. And if we're the first one in line to go buy those deals, we help somebody in a hard situation on a house that needs fixed up. And we're setting ourselves and our families up in the future as well. So we've got a really, really good opportunity being the first ones in line for those real estate deals.
It's genius. You know, I come from the operations background, and when I came here, I was shocked by how many realtors actually do property management, have investments. I think it's incredible. In my mindset, right, I was thinking it's not passive, it's so much work, property management. But if you do this right and you buy the right investment, it really could be one of those things where you're setting up. And I think that's hopefully today what we're able to, number one, teach how to, and then number two, present, so that you can do the best of both, right? So we did create like a quick guide. This quick guide, I thought we'd just go over the top bullets real quick, just to make sure everybody's on the same page with verbiage. There is something in Keller Williams called Kellerisms, and I will say so many times, like, what does that word mean? So I thought just to get us started, we would go over just a couple high points. Number one, the most important thing, and we're gonna teach you how to do it today, I call it a napkin performa. The performa is basically the story. Does this deal pencil, yes or no? Okay, it's simple mathematical equation. It's bricks and sticks. It's very black and white. Okay, in this world we're going to talk about right now, it is not the same world of like, oh, my Christmas tree can fit over here and this can go there, right? We have to think of target demographic, who's going to rent it, who's going to live in it, right? And does the deal pencil? Does it make sense? Or at least does it break even, right? Are we not already underwater before we get there? Because in real estate, we have appreciation. And so with that appreciation, even if we just break even in 20 years, when your kid's ready to go to college, obviously that was a great investment, right? The rent rate. This is the amount of money that you're going to charge every month for rent. This is not a subjective number, although a lot of people would argue with me that it is. You have to be able to prove you can get that rent rate, right? And so that rent rate is key. To me, on the operations side, it is probably the most important question I get asked on whatever property I'm consulting on. How much rent can you get out of this box, essentially, okay? And then GPR, that is your gross potential rent. Those two things are very different to me, okay? Gross potential is kind of what Trey was saying. It's its potential. If you clean it up, if you put some capital improvements in it, if you have great management, if you just get maybe the long-term renter that was getting $5 rent increases or $25, you get them out and you get a new renter at market value, that's its potential. I would advise strongly in today's training, do not make these decisions solely based on potential. Okay, really take into account the difference between actual rent, what can we lease it for today, and potential rent. Find the middle of that and make the best decision for you and your family. Cash flow. This is a word in our business that just means, does it make money? Okay, after income and expenses, does it generate revenue or at least break even? If you were to take a performance to the bank and you were all the way underwater, right, they're going to say, unfortunately, we can't fund this loan. Correct? So it's the same thing that you're thinking here. Does the asset cash flow?
And I want to jump in there too with cash flow. I say starting out, that's one of the most important things to look at. Is ultimately appreciation is great. You can make a lot of money on appreciation. doesn't matter if you can't hold on to it, because it's costing you $500 a month. So I always encourage people when looking at their first deal, when looking to get into real estate, make sure that deal cash flows, even if it, you need to have a buffer and make sure it cash flows to support itself. Because if it doesn't, that makes it a little bit harder. And then as you get better and better, you acquire a couple more, they cash flow a little bit more. Maybe you can then take on a project that loses you a little bit of money. Because then you have that cash flow for that buffer to then, maybe you can make an extra, $1,000 in the back end, or maybe you can hold on to it for 5 years and sell it for an extra $50,000 because of the appreciation and it wasn't necessarily cash flowing. So that's where we like to focus on the cash flow, at least starting out, because it gives you the most room to make mistakes. Because at the end of the day, real estate, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. I've made a ton of mistakes throughout the real estate investing. And so we want to try to build up a buffer and have a safe zone to where, hey, things are going to break, things are going to go wrong. You got to just deal with it. You got to fix that water heater, and we want to make sure you have a buffer and that the property can pay for it, so it's not coming out of your pocket.
Okay, NOI means net operating income. It is a term you just need to learn. NOI, it's the net operating income. How much does this property make? Okay, ROI, what's your return on this investment? What's your rate of return? Okay, appreciation, will this property continue to raise in value? Right, so real estate, for the most part, that is the big win to this equation, but it's part of the equation, appreciation. Supply and demand, does this meet the needs of a renter near this location? And if so, how many other like options exist? And then lastly, before we kind of dive in, is target demographic. Who would rent this property? Okay. So again, kind of fun story about my past. I would get thrown a property in the middle of rural America, no other property nearby. The closest comp is renting for $500 rent. And my past life person would say, can you rent this apartment for $2,000? There's no proof of concept I could do that. There's no comps that would say I could do that. Okay, let's take a jab at it, right? So truly, who is going to be living there that is going to be paying $1,500 more than the closest comp? And that's the answer you have got to answer. If you can identify your driver of who's going to rent this investment property, then this is not the investment property for you. Luckily, the package you guys are going to see today, there is a huge driver for it. In Springfield right now, and I want everybody to hear me, I know I'm being recorded, so I'm gonna make sure I say this very correctly because I sit on a couple housing boards. There is a shortage of affordable housing. I put that in quotes because I am not meaning government subsidized, okay? I'm meaning truly people who are needing to rent and they need it to be affordable for their life. Does everybody understand the difference? We're not gonna go into HUD today. I don't feel qualified to teach on HUD, but affordable is a price point that is desperately needed in Springfield, Missouri. Okay, you have class A's up here, $2,000 rent, $1,800 rent, $1,700 rent, then you have government subsidized. There is a shortage of people who want to pay $1,200 or less a month, who have families, they're hardworking, and they just want to be able to afford to live at a great place. And so today's package is going to meet that need. So when you asked me, who is the target demographic of today's package, I would say everyone in Springfield, because I can tell you, I sit on so many different councils, and that is the #1 need of housing in Springfield, Missouri. Okay, any questions before we kind of dive in?
And it can be about any of them. The terminology, what that means, it was a quick, I guess I say down and dirty in what those are. So, I mean, if you have questions on cash flow, if you have questions on ROI, I mean, any questions at all?
Okay, we're gonna build out a pro forma. The rest is just great, top 10 things that you need to know that matter. I just wanted to point out before we pivot to actually building a pro forma with Levi, we did put on here cap rate. Cap rate is something specific for commercial. If you were gonna buy this with a commercial loan or you were going to buy it as a package, this is not specific to residential. So Levi, do you wanna share about cap rate?
Yeah, I just, when looking at residential, cap rates usually, you start to look at that more when you start getting into larger deals, 5+ units. And so a lot of these apartment complexes, you drive down 65 and see massive apartment complexes. Those are based off of the revenue it generates. It doesn't base it off of the home that sold in the last 3 months right next door. it's based off of the revenue. So that's where the cap rate comes in, and it's a great, I say it's a great tool in the toolbox to look at when it comes to some of those larger deals. But residential, I usually try to keep it simple and just look at cash flow, look at what the house next door in that neighborhood sold for, so that I know what the ending value would be.
Has anybody not heard of cap rate? Anybody not know what cap rate means? It's okay if you don't. Everybody knows? Okay, this will be an easy class.
Okay, we're gonna really build out this pro forma, but before I do, so how you find a deal, right? Today, we're bringing the deal to you. That's just number one thing is location matters most. It really is relative in this conversation today because this is a great location. So we're gonna let Trey kind of explain his package, and then we're gonna take one of the houses out of the package, and in real time, Levi and I have not done this prior, we're gonna build a true pro forma. So we're gonna build what we think the rent rates are. How did I come up with that rent rate, right? And we're gonna build it all the way through to expenses, to what Trey thinks capital improvements are. A capital improvement is a big ticket item, and it normally raises the value of the asset. So we're gonna go through that, and then we're gonna find the NOI. And so we're just gonna pull one house out. Trey's already done it for the whole package. You wanna walk them through your package?
Yeah, what do you want? How in depth? Because my spreadsheet goes into all of that already. So,
And I was gonna ask too, to put the ones that already have investment properties, I guess, on the spot. Talking about deals, where did you find your deal? The ones that do have it, do have investment properties? Realtors,
I bought mine from a client
fine,
that I sold it to.
less. So all great, great ways to find a deal. I mean, I know my first one was actually a house I drove by every single day, on my way home. And I was just looking, a tree was growing in the middle of it. It was coming out of the roof. And I was like, man, I would really like to fix that up and buy it. And so that's how I found my deal. And I started finding my deals is I would literally just, there's 20 different ways to get to your house, most likely. Just take a different way each day from home. It adds 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes onto your commute. But that's how I would find my deals, is I would just take a different route and I would mark down. I have an app called Landglide that'll show me who owns it. It'll show me the acreage, it'll show me most of the time square footage. And I would literally it would track my movement. And whenever I found a house that had overgrown grass or looked disheveled that needed some love, I would just mark it on Landglide and then go home, look it up on Fast People Search and call the owner. So that's how I found a couple of my deals. So there's a lot of ways to get creative when finding a deal. Realtors is great. I mean, I know guys that buy lists. I know, you can buy them from client. So there's a lot of different ways to find great deals in real estate, and they don't cost a lot of money.
yeah, we've literally, of our 21 units that Rachel and I have purchased on our own, I would say probably 90% of those have come from other real estate agents. And it's the same thing as generating leads. Instead of calling the general public to ask who needs to buy or sell a house, we're calling other real estate agents and saying, hey, you have any deals? You have any good deals coming up, and specify what you're looking for. If you're looking for a flip or you're looking for a rental, have a plan. And I think we'll talk about that probably a little bit later on, but having a strategy is so incredibly important with this. When we started out, we're just like, whatever makes sense, we'll go do. It didn't matter whether it was Airbnb or it was long-term rental or what multifamily. We're after all of it. And we've only been burnt once, fortunately, but it was on the Airbnb. So we don't do short-term rental. We do furnished midterm rental, which is just a 30-day lease. We furnish the whole property and you get a little bit higher rents for that. Similar to an Airbnb, you're going to get much higher rents on a monthly basis. Your expenses are going to go up with it as well, though. So understanding what goes with each type of investment property, whether it's an Airbnb, midterm rental, long-term rental, multifamily, whatever it is, there are differences in how they operate. So understanding how each one works is big, and then having a plan of what you're looking for. But if you can go hit the phones and call every real estate agent in town, telling them exactly what you're looking for, you're going to find something eventually.
So 2 words we did not say was rent roll. So I want to make sure everybody knows that rent roll is if it's an investment property that already has renters in it, there is going to be a rent roll. The rent roll and the P&L, the profit and loss for those are the 2 items you should ask for if you want to buy a property that's already investment. This property is mixed, right? You have some vacant and some full.
That's correct. Yep.
So if you were to buy a property today from Trey, we would ask Trey for the rent roll, right? We would want to see who's living there and what are they actively paying today. And then if it's vacant, that's my favorite to get. It's because I already know the upside is there. Okay, but like Levi would probably disagree with me because it might already be cash flowing. And then you buy one that's already signed, sealed, delivered, and you wait till that lease expires and then you make that decision. Okay, so the rent roll was mentioned. So that is what that is. It's a document that usually contains what the house address is, what the floor plan is, what the square footage is. Some of the investors in the room are probably purchasing by price per square foot. That's a great way to know if you're getting a great rate. And then the P&L is like, what is it bringing in every month? And is it expense heavy? Some of these houses that maybe have some aged areas in them have some opportunities for higher expenses. In that category, there's 2 schools of thought. You can, 1, run a higher expense ratio and just prepare for more expenses month over month, right? The hot water heater, the roof, those kind of things. Or you can have a separate part of your loan that does capital improvements all at one time. So you get someone to come through the house or the apartment and you're like, okay, I know we need new paint. I know we need new signage. This needs a new brand. And I know I need $100,000. So in excess to my loan for the asset, I'm going to ask for this capital improvement chunk of money. And you do it wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You raise the value of the rent rate. Most banks are fine with that, right? Because you're automatically going to get a renter at a much higher rate. And it's a great way to do it. Both schools, there's not one that's right and one that's wrong, okay? It's one that works for you and where you're at today in order to make this purchase today. There is many people that let the renter stay in there because it's cash flowing. It's making them money and they're a great family in there. And that's a good thing to do, okay? There's other people that we actually have right now that said it's fine if you don't renew any of them and raise all their rents $200 to $500. I guarantee you all those people are gonna leave, okay? So when all those people leave, right, that's where that owner has to come in and put some money into it, okay? And get it up. If you're saying the value of this house needs to rent for $2,000 and we've had a renter in there for 5 years at $900, you guys in the room need to be the expert to say, what am I gonna have to do to get this value up to $2,000 rent? There is this thing that just naturally rents have increased in Springfield. That is a true thing, okay? But also people's demands have gone up too. So if you're gonna say all of a sudden this house that was $900 is now $2,000, you better show a big difference in what they're getting, okay? And same goes for renewal. I just kind of a side note, I love when a renter stays, okay? I think it costs you less money. You don't have to flip the asset, right? If they've been a great renter, they paid on time. Let them stay, okay? Because if you don't have the money right then and there to put all this money into it, you'd rather a $50 to $100 rent increase and let the renter stay and maybe clean their carpets, do some things that help your asset, then hey, you gotta go, I know my neighbor next door is getting $500 more rent, but they may have granite, they may have 2-car garage. You gotta really compare. This world is 100% apples to apples, okay? So what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna take one of the houses out of this package. We're gonna take 1036 East Morningside. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and it is 1152 square feet. So this one is vacant, right, currently?
Morningside is not vacant, but run it as if it is vacant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Morningside rent amount is going to be $16.95, okay? So I'm gonna say GPR, what he thinks GPR is potential rent. He's gonna say potentially you could get $17.95, okay? It is a 4-2. How many, quick pro question, how many people know what the #1 highest floor plan in Springfield is to rent? Not rent rate, like how many do we have the most of, the highest saturated floor plans in Springfield? It's a 2-1, and it is oversaturating the market, and so you better have a great 2-1. If you come across a 4-2 or a 3-1 or a 3-2 or a 3-3, you automatically put yourself in a higher category of renters who need to rent in Springfield, okay? So this 4-2 is super awesome, okay? I don't care what the outside of that house looks like. Already I am thinking in my head, I have 5 families right now that would take this today, okay? So 4-2 is a home run. So we're gonna say, he says GPR is $17.95, but we're gonna say actual rent. Because you also wanna appreciate the upside. So we're gonna say the actual rent on this is $15.95, okay? So automatically, you guys can see right off the bat, there's a $200 instant difference as soon as that renter moves out, okay? And so expenses, Levi, I'm gonna kick it off to you if you wanna explain this.
So, Erica mentioned expense ratio. Does everyone know what that means, expense ratio? And it's
No, I
okay,
don't.
I say, it's okay if not. Expense ratio, it's fancy. I used to be a CPA in my past life, so,
You were?
yeah, so
Oh,
I'm glad I'm out of that, but, what that basically means is it's a ratio of how much this house is gonna cost you in terms of all your expenses. And a lot of times I'll group in taxes, I'll group in insurance, I'll group in maintenance, because a lot of people forget about that. I know starting out, I would listen to Bigger Pockets. That was my number one podcast I would listen to. And sometimes they would say, oh yeah, you can rent something for X, and then you have property tax, you have insurance, and then $100 for maintenance, and then there's your cash flow. That's not always true. So you want to make sure you're building in a buffer, making sure you're looking at, what kind of property. Erica mentioned it. Is it an asset that's a little bit older? Because if it's a little bit older, you probably have a little bit older of a hot water heater. You have the roof that you're gonna have to, that's capital expenditures, but you might have to go in there and replace, carpet or clean up carpet. And that might increase your expense ratio to where, on average, expense ratio, I usually run it around 35%, right in the middle of this. But what that means is, so you're $15.95, you get an annual amount. So annual, small is 19,140. And then I take 35% of that. So roughly my expenses is going to be 6,699.
Would a property management company go into that?
It will, yeah. So, and that's where the favorite thing, with the properties we manage, we have kind of tightened that expense ratio down. So we typically run at a 35% expense ratio. Starting out, it might be 40. I've looked at properties where I've had as high as 50 to 60 expense ratios. Just because the best way to do it is to go line by line and look up, we all have CRS tax data. So you look at the house, you look up, you have your taxes. You have your insurance. So I have an insurance guy that I call. If I'm looking at a house, he's usually my second or third call and say, hey, tell me what this insurance would be. You tell me, most likely it's gonna be roughly X. And then I look at maintenance, through questions of either talking to the agent or looking at, again, the CRS tax data. I know it was built in the 1950s, so most likely there's gonna be some work that needs to be done. So this is the maintenance side. I usually denote that as a percentage, but if it's a little bit older of a home, I might say maintenance needs to be 10% of rents or 20% of rents. So then if you go line by line, then, if I have to pay utilities, what does that look like? What percentage am I gonna have to spend there? I'm gonna have to spend $100 in rent or $100 in expenses because I'm paying the gas bill, something like that, and almost itemize it out. If you itemize it out, you can look at how much it's gonna cost you, and then you can know, okay, of my expenses, it's eating up 40, 50, or maybe 25% of my rent. So that's what we mean by expense ratio, is just kind of looking at how much are those expenses going to eat up your annual rent.
So then you wanna keep going.
Question.
Yes.
where does interest on the loan come in? Does it come in there or someplace else?
No, so interest usually, I like to look at operating expenses. So this is operating, that's a great question, operating expenses. And then your mortgage comes in on the second half.
Okay.
So I always like to look at, okay, what is it gonna cost me to operate this asset? And then the mortgage and loan, I can change. So operating, you can change by, putting in capital expenditures. But for the most part, that's gonna be a reoccurring expense. With your mortgage, you might be able to pay it off. You might be able to, offer a cash deal. Or you might be able to refi and put a loan back on it. So we like to look at that separate.
Also, I was taught this by a very awesome person in the room, but if you include it in the expense ratio and you go to sell it, it skews the numbers of the value of the home because their loan is gonna be different than your loan. So it's really good to pull it out, so you show the picture of the investment, then include it.
One other line item, do you factor in, with the operating expenses, a projected percentage of the vacancy loss? And does that, when you do the rent roll and get some of these deals, is that how some of those operating costs or expenses can get to that 50 to 60% range?
Yeah, so you can, one of the best ways to do it, there's a lot of different line items you could add on. I factor in ours just, with me doing it for a little while, I just factored into my expense ratio, but you're right, sometimes if a tenant, depending on like a 2-1, we're oversaturated. If I'm looking, a lot of times I like to just go to Zillow. If I'm looking at a house and say, I want to purchase this, I'll go to Zillow and look at all the listings that are for rent on Zillow. And if there's nothing in that neighborhood,
Yeah.
I
it's
kind of
still a
get,
good
yeah,
purchase,
I get excited. Okay, it's either everything's rented or no one else has a rental in this area, and most likely it's going to be able to rent. If I see 30 different listings of all 2-1s, I say, okay, where's my rent value? And, am I gonna have some potential vacancy in here? And if it looks like there's a neighborhood that I have a ton of vacancy or there's a ton of rentals available, I might factor in a 5 or 10%, and that's how it does it. It creeps up on the expense ratio.
And vacancy loss, sometimes if you purchase this as a package, so if you buy all of this together, then you would obviously take into consideration that a percentage of this will be vacant as you do the make ready. Okay, so to Sheldon's point, absolutely. If you're buying just one and you're gonna rent just one, you can be a little bit more overzealous with your own portfolio, because the goal would be to rent it, right? So you're gonna mess around with your rent rate until you get it full. So I wouldn't, if you're buying just one, I personally would not put vacancy loss into your expenses because you just have one. If you're gonna buy the whole package, absolutely, you have to take time for the make ready, gotta take time for the work it takes to do it. So, yes.
And the last thing, the vacancy loss, also management. So you're gonna, unless you want to, I always encourage, if it's your first one, I always encourage people to try it out and manage your own property. And it can be a headache, but it teaches you how to manage a property and look at it of what needs to be fixed. How do I acquire a tenant? How do I, keep it clean? I keep it rented. And then as you acquire more, you hand it over to a property manager, you can know what to expect. And if they come in, and unfortunately, there are some cases where, management company might not manage it as well as you do. But you can know what to expect, and it helps you refine those skills if you're managing your own assets.
Well, I
So
think it sets expectation for you. Today, this is a true story. I had a call from an owner and he has a window that's broken. And he didn't want to fix it yet because we didn't have a renter in it, right? And I was like, we have to fix the window today. It's gonna be fixed. We're gonna ask for forgiveness later, right? But it's probably because he hasn't ever managed his own. So there is something to be said of managing your own property for at least a year. It puts you in the space of the renter. You kind of feel their calls at 1 o'clock in the morning, my power went out, my heat went out, whatever. It just gives you such a good first of all, appreciation, but second of all, just a knowledge of where your expenses are going. Truly, as an investor in this room, if you have not done it and the manager keeps coming back to you and is like, oh, we need this and we need this and we need this, it can sometimes feel like they just need so much to do what I need it to do, right? So understanding the value of the expense is so huge. And I could sit here and tell you 50,000 stories, but until you actually get the call at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's not gonna make sense, right? Because at 2 o'clock in the morning, I guarantee we're gonna pay someone to get over there and fix it, right? When you're hearing my story, you'd be like, well, I'd love to save that 150 service call. I'll just go. Okay, so it's two different schools of thought, so definitely encourage that. Okay, so after the equation, it's so basic and it's annualized, like Levi said. So annually, we have rent. Will you do annual GPR too, just so they can see their upside?
Yeah.
So you're gonna get your upside. I always keep this at the top across the board. For any investor, because some of you in this room are gonna be representing potential buyers of investment properties. You are trying to sell this picture of what it could be, the same way you would sell a house, right? Just like we talked about, their Christmas tree would go here and their family would go here. Think dollars and signs in investment, okay? So it's not Christmas trees, but it's dollar signs, okay? So you're trying to sell this picture of what could be for your investment person that's buying this house with you, with your hub. So I always carry GPR across the top. That's just a pro tip. Actual, you have to tell them what it's actually gonna be. This is what you're really gonna make this year. There's a renter in it. This is how much money you're gonna make. And then your expense ratio, and then your NOI.
We mentioned it earlier, NOI is net operating income, and that is truly how much the asset brings in, how much rent you collect, minus the operations of it. So it doesn't include the loan. It doesn't include stuff like that is outside, because we're looking at the NOI looks solely at how much income it brings in and then how much it costs to operate.
And this is where you would get with an Andrew from UN Mortgage or somebody like that and see there's some creative financing on this. There are some that are interest only. There are some owners that will do, you can assume the note that they were paying prior. There's a lot of creative ideas under this bucket, okay? But if this bucket is positive, which this one is an incredible investment in a great location and a 4.2 that is gonna rent for you tomorrow. Okay, so this one is a home run slam dunk, and I haven't even shown you the pictures of it, okay?
Depending on what the price of it is.
Yeah, because a lot of times this is what, you can rent minus your expenses, and then this is where you look at your loan. This is where you call a guy like Andrew and say, what is it gonna cost me? What is the purchase price? And then what is it going to cost me to take this loan on? And if it's, and again, reminder, this is annual.
Mhm.
So if it's, let's just say $1,200 a month, which, that's gonna come out to 14,400. So you're gonna effectively lose money on this deal. But if it came out to $1,000 or $800 a month, then you can look at it and say, okay, this thing is potentially in a cash flow, and look at moving forward. So that's where,
Or break even.
or break even, and that's where I always push towards cash flow for the first deal. But we're sad Andrew's not here to speak
Yeah.
more on it, but he was.
But even on this, so this says that this property has a great income and it has a great expense ratio, and it already is going to have a positive NOI. So you can go to a bank, many banks, right? And now present this before they even see the house to see the formula of the deal, right? And so from this equation here, then I want to talk about shopping rates before we hand off to you to go to the next house. I am a big proponent. Okay, how many people in this room use, what is the rent thing you use?
Rental meter?
Rentometer.
Rentometer.
How many people in this room use Rentometer? Okay, how many people use Zillow, like you talked about, Zestimate? Okay, how many people go to the house and shop the nearby rentals? Okay, I just gave you guys the Eric Pepper's secret sauce. So what I do, it doesn't matter if it takes me 5 seconds or 5 hours, I go put my physical feet to the location of the house. And then from there, I can do it quickly, 15 minutes, drive around the neighborhood, find, like he said, find the other signs. There's no other signs, right? Home run. Or if it's an apartment community, I go shop them. Hey, my son, he just graduated college. We're looking for his first apartment. I do my whole spiel. And the reason why I do that, this is so true, everybody in this room hear me, if you're not doing this, you're getting fake information. Because Rentometer is gonna tell you a price, Zillow's gonna tell you a price, but that property manager that needs that rent, some people get like bonuses and stuff like that when you're in property management, they're gonna tell you what it's actually gonna take to sign that lease today. That is the only true take it to the bank rent amount you can take. And me and Levi were talking about this upstairs, not only is that critical, we did not pad this pro forma. In the world I come from, you have to pad this pro forma to make this top line a lot higher, okay? And there's a thing called ancillary income. This is for next, so we're in 101, we'll go to 201 next time. But ancillary income is all these additional incomes that we can charge now in property management. We can charge pet fees, we can charge admin fees, we can charge pet rent, we can charge utilities. Let's say you include Wi-Fi, okay? Insurance, renter's insurance. Renter's insurance costs you $9 a month, you can charge $13 a month. There's $4, right? So we're gonna fill this whole top part of our pro forma with all of these things. The only way you would have all of those things of what comparable people are doing nearby you is to go do it. True story, we have a guy, he wanted to rent his house for $2,000. I drove over to the house for $2,000, right across the street was a for rent sign. Picked up the phone, called the sign, hey, how much is your house renting for today? I'm really interested. $15.95 was what that house was going for. They're identical, same builder. And if I sign today, no deposit, no admin fee. So immediately I call that owner back and I'm like, hey, house right across the street, 2,000, they're doing no deposit, no admin fee. True story. He said, what can I do to get at least $17.95? This is a very true story. I said, include Wi-Fi. We put it on the market the next day. We signed a lease that next day for $17.95 by just including Wi-Fi, which is like $30 a month. Okay. And he got $200 more. How would I have ever known that if I didn't call that house right across the street? So I have a different school of thought, but I think it really, really, really works. Cool. So the next part of this was going to be Andrew with the mortgage side. So we are going to just ask you to call him for what he would give you. He has a cool opportunity for realtors in this room with Mortgage for you to basically represent yourself or your buyer and that kind of thing. Okay. Any questions about how to build a performance?
You have his name and number available.
Yeah, we got flyers for them, actually.
Oh, we have the flyers. Great. Okay, do you want to go through the rest of the?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah, where's Andrew from? You see he was flying in and got stuck, so is he not local?
He is Mortgage, but he was doing a class somewhere.
Yeah, he was doing a presentation or something, yeah, and he was out of state.
He does Mortgage with, so,
Let me try it.
but he had a great solution with your commission and how you know. I can't do it without a.
I see too.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of lenders have opportunities. He was just doing this.
Oh my gosh, we did it.
Yeah, you did
Look at
it.
that. Tech tray.
Sec tray.
Mouse goes. Okay, so super duper nerdy here. Probably not as nerdy as Levi's spreadsheets, but we're gonna do our best. What we're after is to look at this whole package as they just did. So we're taking everything, we're putting it all together so that we can see the numbers of the package. All of the numbers that we're gonna go over on the right side here in a second, as far as purchase price and things of that nature, are gonna be as if you buy the package as a whole. The benefit to buying a package as a whole, so we've got about 52 to 54 properties in this package specifically. The benefit to buying a package as a whole is you're gonna have a lower price per unit. Less people can buy bigger packages, so demand goes down for those. And when demand goes down, prices go down per unit. So when you see purchase price on these, just FYI, this is a disclaimer. If you want to buy one of these, that price is going to go up. If you are going to bring a buyer for one of these, that price is going to go up again. Okay, so these numbers are based off of if you buy this whole package all in one swoop. Does that make sense? Okay, don't come to me and complain when you want to buy one and the price goes up. We covered this. So what we're doing here, what this spreadsheet does effectively is determines our NOI and then gives us a cash on cash return or an ROI. So again, net operating income, all that is your gross income minus your operating expenses. That is before the mortgage. Then to find our return on investment, if we have a mortgage, that's gonna be a totally different number than our NROI, right? Our ROI is gonna be a percentage base. Before we get super deep into this, that's the most important thing that we look at as an ROI, as far as an investment goes. Does anybody in here have money in the stock market? Okay, very good. So what's an average, what do you hear, even if you don't, what's an average return in the stock market that we hear?
7%.
7, very good. Okay, thank you. 7 to 8% is typically what people will say in the stock market. If you put money, anybody, you get a Robinhood account and you go put $5,000 in the stock market on your Robinhood account, how many phone calls at 2 a.m. are you getting? 0. Thank you. Very good. You guys are smart. You are going to get phone calls with this, whether it's from a renter at 2 a.m. to unclog their toilet or from a property manager to talk about rental situations and stuff like that. There is no such thing. I don't care who you listen to on social media. There's no such thing as passive income and not passive. It is a sliding scale and you get to choose your heart. You get to choose how much work you put into it. This is going to show us how much work we're putting into it and how much return we're going to get for that work. Now, you don't get any calls at 2 a.m. to unclog toilets. You'll take a lower return percentage than if you are doing that. Say yes.
Yes.
Very good. What we're doing with these return percentages is we're comparing ourselves to the stock market. This is the easiest way that I've had it explained to me. These are not my words. I'm actually a moron. We're going to look and see what kind of a return we're going to get. And if we're not going to beat the stock market on this package, why would we not go put our money in the stock market when we're not going to get calls, right?
Right.
Boom, love it. So we're gonna go through this as they just did it, and we're gonna look at the package as a whole. We've got it all the way down to the bottom where you can see the total numbers. And let's actually go through that first so we can see. I am gonna explain each column here. So we've got monthly rent. This is average rent. So what we do is we go to Rentometer, we plug in the address, the number of bedrooms and bathrooms, and it will give you a low, medium, and high of what you can expect for rent. Obviously, if you're looking at the low amount, that's gonna be for a property that's not super fixed up and has some issues. The higher number is gonna be as if that we've got granite and we've got everything nice, so you don't have to fix anything and it's super awesome. What we use is right in the middle. And whenever we're looking at a deal, we will go to Rentometer and figure out what's the low, medium, and high, and then we go to Zillow. It's the same thing as running comps for a house that we're gonna list, right? We're trying to figure out what has rented in the past, so we know about what people have paid. And then we're gonna go look what is for rent currently. If there's 500 3-2s that are all listed at $1,000 a month and we go list ours for $1,200, nobody's gonna rent it, right? If we go price it at $850 a month, we're gonna have not only somebody call us today and have that thing rented today, but it's gonna be the best renter that we can possibly get because we have the best house on the market. Yes?
Yes.
Damn, you guys are getting good. Monthly rent. So this is our average monthly rent. We just went to Rentometer and took the average number in order to do these numbers. So keep that in mind as we do this. Monthly principal and interest. So this is where our mortgage is factored in. I've got 2 tabs down here. One is for a finance version. The other is for a cash version. So you can see, this is what we're sending out to investors. So they can see, are we financing this deal or are we paying cash? And then if they're paying cash, boom, let's just go look at this option. If they know they're doing financing, we're just looking at this option. When selling this stuff, we've got to make it easy, right? Investors look at how many deals a day, right? If that's truly what they're doing, we've got to make this super easy for them so they see the numbers and bam, they make a quick decision. Most true investors are that high D personality that make quick decisions. The numbers and the facts are in front of them and boom, they're off and running. Principal and interest is right here. That gets worked into our numbers. Taxes, this is an annual base. Insurance is an annual base. Pretty much everything else is monthly. Those are computed into our numbers that we use here. So we're going to take monthly rent. We're going to take out the principal and interest, taxes, and insurance that are moved to a monthly basis. And then we have our monthly expenses. Now, disclaimer on this package and this spreadsheet specifically, like they talked about, they were going to run expense ratios at 30 to 40%. The way that this looks right now is running at about 21, 22%. So it's low, just FYI. If you take this package to a bank for financing purposes and they're doing their loan, all their nerdy calculations like we do as well, they're going to say, hey, your expense ratios are too low. We need to bump those up a little bit, which are going to affect cash flow numbers. As long as it's cash flowing at the rate they want it to cash flow, they'll still do the deal. However, for running your numbers, you need to take that into account. What's included in our monthly expenses are our maintenance and CapEx. So we are automatically putting in 10% for those just to get the deal started as far as analyzing these numbers. That's an easy number for me to get across my head. It's the same thing every time, just take a zero off the monthly rent. Utilities, we've only got one property in here that it's a 4-unit small multifamily deal. So our utilities on this whole package are super low, as our trash, because we're only paying for utilities and trash at that fourplex. We're not paying for utilities or trash at any other property out there. Management, I add in management whenever we're running numbers. We just passed off our personal properties, most of them, to a property manager. However, before we were managing ourselves and we were managing the 21 on our own. But when we would look at a deal, we would work management into that deal because we knew at some point we didn't want to manage. So when we're buying those deals, at some point, you're not going to want to answer the phone calls anymore. You're going to pass it off to management. Work this property management into the deal, even if you're going to manage it yourself, so that later on, when you do want to pass it off, you know we're still going to cash flow at a rate that makes sense for us.
Can you explain 10% management?
Yes, so 10%, every property manager is different. 10% is the general rule of thumb to expect for a property manager. Is there anything else that you want? Is there anything specific you want me to explain there?
Just that it's a sliding scale as well, just
Yeah.
similar to your.
Sliding scale, if you've got more units and more properties that you're passing off, you may be able to get a lower rate. If you've got one property, expect that 10%
Yeah, agreed.
at least. So work that in there. Again, we're just wanting to make sure we have all of our numbers up front so we know what to expect down the road.
And just pro tip on that management fee, a lot of people do property management and that's great. The number one thing you should be paying for with property managers, how are these people paying their rent, right? You need their money. You have to be able to pay the mortgage. So what software are they using? Are we still old school, we're collecting check and money order and all of that? Then you're gonna delay your ability to get the income by days. So as that percentage rise, so should what you're getting in return for that percentage. If you're helping an investor right now, that's the thing we need, right? We don't wanna go pay for whichever software, whichever thing, it's gonna be so much money. Let's find a management company that includes that in their percentage and you're getting ACH transfers. Adam Grady makes a joke with me and Levi, but he says, is this the kind of owner who wants to sit on the beach and eat sardines and see their bank account go up? Or is this the kind of owner who's sitting at home counting each penny? Okay, you have to know which kind of investor it is to justify that percentage of that management fee.
Yeah, and there'll be a bunch of different questions that go into that as well. Same thing, so they talked about vacancy as well. We work that in, especially on these big packages. Essentially, this is a joke, but you can tell how good an operator is or a management company is based on their vacancy rates. Somebody who operates really well is gonna have a much lower vacancy rate, meaning how much of the year is that property vacant? Are we turning over once a year and we've got 2 months in there that we don't have money coming in? Or are we having that 15-day period? We know somebody's moving out. We can get that crew in there to get the unit turned within a few days and have it re-rented really, really quick. So vacancy, we run at 5% because we assume that we're gonna be pretty good as far as getting units turned and getting another renter in there. So it's only gonna be vacant 5% of the time. That goes for all of the properties that are included in the package. I'm gonna explain these real quick, then we're gonna go back the other way. All-in amount for us is the purchase price plus what is the dollar amount that we're gonna have to go put into that property to get it up to that average market rent. We had the first column was the gross income from rent. What are we gonna have to do to get those average rents from this property? We have those worked in here already. We have market value. If you have an appraisal, you can do that, or go get online and run a CMA on these properties whenever you have time to do that and see, okay, what would I list this property for in order to sell? And that's how we're gonna come up with our market value. This is very subjective. This is an opinion, but it gives you your options down the road. One thing that we do is that we didn't start off doing and we learned a lesson. We have 3 ways that we will operate our properties. One is a 12-month lease. One is that 30-day rental where we furnish the property. We call it a midterm lease. And then we will do flips as well. So when we look at a property, we don't do Airbnbs. We already know that's out. We're not analyzing properties to do that. We have 3 options. In order for us to buy a property, it's got to fit 2 of the 3 options. We do that so we have exit strategies. If we're buying a property just to flip, and that's the only thing that we're gonna do with it, it doesn't make sense as a rental property. All of a sudden, the market tanks and we're stuck with that property and we can't rent it, it doesn't make any sense, right? If we can do a midterm rental or a long-term rental, we're cool with that. Ultimately, our goal is to buy these properties and hold them for our future, kind of what we're talking about today. But if one of those options is a flip and we know that we're gonna make money flipping it, we'll buy it, whether it's a midterm rental or a long-term rental. Typically, if it's gonna be a midterm rental, it will also make sense as a long-term rental as well. So that's the nice thing about that. Our criteria, it has to fit 2 of those 3 options for us, or else we're not touching it. We're pretty conservative with that, however. So you can see market value, what's our all-in amount? That's gonna tell you how much equity is in it. That gives you your flip number right there. So bam. Look at all these numbers. Here's our equity. Take away 10% for selling costs, realtor fees, title company fees, stuff like that. And then whatever number is left over, if you're cool with buying that property, putting the work in and then flipping it and making that amount of money, bam, it makes sense as a flip. Does that make sense?
Can you guys see it in the back what the numbers were? Do you want him to say it?
What, right here?
Yeah, why don't you just go through the big all-in amount, purchase price and market?
Okay, so for this whole package, purchase price is 4.3 roughly million. And our repairs, we've estimated, we've gone through and averaged out basically repairs per property at 15 grand per property in order to get it to that average market rent amount. So we're gonna say that that is what we need to go do it to get to where it needs to be. That gives us our all-in amount. So you buy it for 4.3, you put $765,000 into all of these properties. Your all-in amount's gonna be 5.1 million. That doesn't mean that you're spending 5.1 million in cash right now, especially if you're financing this property. If you're buying the properties in cash and you gotta go do the repairs in cash, then yes, that's how much cash you need to go make this deal make sense. If you're financing this deal, you need 20% of the purchase price here unless you have a different option or you're doing more down or less down or whatever it is. However, your all-in amount is gonna be 5.1 million. That's gonna be money that you gotta pay back to the bank, equity that you have in it, and repair costs that you have in it. Go ahead.
So when you have a deal in front of you,
Uh,
you're looking at 3 paths. You're looking at buy and hold long-term,
Yep.
buy and hold short-term, buy and not hold.
Yep.
So how do you, maybe this is another seminar, but how do you decide which fits into your long-term strategy? What does that look like?
So, it's for the rental purposes, it's gonna be our ROI. What's our return on investment? That's our percentage. Are we cool with that percentage beating the stock market essentially, right? Are we happy with that? Which that's just from the monthly cash flow and annual cash flow. That doesn't take into account appreciation or tenant pay down on the debt. We do leverage everything. We leverage it at 20%. We don't really go below that. We want to feel for a little bit more security. But if that ROI makes sense just from the cash, from the monthly income from the cash flow, bam, that's what fits our goals. Our ultimate long-term goal is to accrue as many properties as we can that have the best cash flow possible. There's a lot of people out there on social media right now that says, go accumulate as many doors as you can, and they don't tell you anything about it making money. That is super, super dangerous. It might be great in 30 years, but like Levi said, you buy this package of 52 properties and you're paying, because we're upside down, $500 per property, you ain't making money, right? So being careful there. Ultimate goal is how many can we buy and keep in cash flow at a dollar amount that makes sense. If we can do that, great. If the money makes sense for us to flip a property, then we're cool with that as well. It's really how hard are our dollars gonna work is what we're after. And if flipping the property to create the cash to go put into a different investment vehicle is gonna give us a better return on our money, we're gonna go do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
What's your total NOI on this package?
I don't know that I've got it on this sheet. I think it's on the end.
Not hold.
535, yeah.
Yeah, 535, 782.
And you know, there's 2 ways to look at this. Levi and I and Trey, we all looked at this the other day and I was saying, some of these are occupied though. So keep that in mind, because even though you're budgeting for 15 grand, that's gonna have to sit in a bank somewhere. Because you won't be able to do those repairs right now. It's occupied. There's a renter in there. So kind of keep that in mind too, if you're playing out these numbers. That 765 is obviously the ethical way he's saying to go into it, knowing that they need upkeep. It's not necessarily realistic for today as half the property is occupied.
I wanted to say too, I think the other thing, like for me, when looking about the buy and the hold is, for me, one of the things that has been a strategy is building for the long term is, do you have an income to support the things that aren't cash flowing and building that appreciation and equity in it? So for me personally, my real estate sales income exceeds what my living costs are. So then what are the decisions that what do I do with that income? And I'm in real estate, and real estate's what I know, so that's easy for me. So investing in something that might not make sense to Trey's spreadsheet or somebody else's picture will make sense for me. Trey and I've debated this a lot, but for me, that was a way for me to offset my income that I didn't. So for me, that was like the stock market, but I could really put my hands in it, and I could potentially sell to my buyer or my clients or whatever. So it was tangible for me. And so for me, offsetting my income.
I really appreciate that point of view. I think it's so important that we understand today's class was to truly dive into a practical application of this. But investing in real estate, obviously there's some tax advantages. There's a lot more so I really appreciate that point of view. And obviously by the group today, we probably should do another class to kind of have a tax person come in, have an insurance guy come in. These are things that are truly like, I can't tell you today, you get this much tax, whatever, but it's a huge part of the equation. Some people truly buy real estate just for the tax break because they have something else that has a huge taxation on it, okay? So I thank you for that point of view. What works for the three of us may not work for all of you, but there are other facets of this world of investment properties, especially in rentals and investment properties that have other reasons and other tax breaks, insurance, utilities, so many things I'm thinking of right now, even government, if you get in that affordable bracket. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on of how you could gain income for yourself.
Thank you.
I was gonna add, maybe it's a snippet for the next class. Someone approached the tax portion, question to me, and they asked me, what's my biggest expense? And I went through all the typical stuff, of mortgage, of groceries, anything I could think of. And they came back to me and they said, really, your biggest expense is taxes. You gotta pay the government 30, 40, depending on where your bracket is, 45%, including state, of your income to the government. And what real estate allows you to do is it allows you to bring down your effectively your tax bracket. So instead of paying 45, you might only have to pay 10% of your income to taxes through depreciation, through cost segregation, through things that real estate allows for, and we're allowed to take advantage of because we're real estate professionals. So it's a great, it is a great, I guess, avenue to save on your biggest expense, which is taxes in your life.
And a very real application of that is our taxes last year. I won't bore you guys with numbers, but I am a believer of don't give the government your money if you don't need to. As far as paying your quarterly taxes, some people get scared by that because we're not actually giving it up. And at the end of the year, we're gonna have a big tax bill. We did cost segregations on several properties last year and wrote off all the repairs. And so I had paid from my income alone. I didn't pay any money in quarterly. Theoretically, I'd have a big tax bill at the end of the year through those cost segregations, all that stuff. We actually got a refund back. So that's what we paid.
What is cost segregation?
Yeah.
It's basically a report that it goes in the accounting side. It separates the asset into different categories of, you basically are saying, hey, the cabinets, so whenever the government allows you to depreciate real estate, they're saying real estate depreciates at a 27.5-year basis. So after 27.5 years of owning it, it'll be zero. So what it does is it says, this report says, hey, actually, the building, the structure itself is 27.5, but those cabinets that you put in there, that flooring you put in there, that's only a 5-year. That's only a 10-year depreciation schedule. And then what it does is it basically, you can take all that appreciation in that first year. So it's kind of a complex report, but what it does, it allows you to pull out that depreciation and take it year one. And you can save, you know, and it's not an expense to you. You know, they might say you have $30,000 of expenses year one through this report. You didn't spend $30,000. It's what was in the house that they pulled out and the government allows you to take that.
I just tell my CPA I want to do a cost seg and he does it and then tells me.
I'm the nerd that likes that stuff.
It accelerates and you also have to be careful that if you do a cost segregation and you go to sell the property later, at what point you'll want to make sure you 1031 it versus selling it outright, because then you will have the implication at that portion too. So it's almost like that snowball effect you have to be mindful of. If I start a cost segregation on this property, I need to be aware of what my exit strategy will be in the future because I accelerated the depreciation.
It's very, like, we're getting to advanced strategies to where I honestly had no idea about any of this starting out. For the first 3 or 4 years of investing, I was literally just looking at cash flow. Can I make my bills? Can this property pay for itself? And then just through acquiring and talking through other agents, talking to other professionals, lawyers, property managers, I slowly learned this. So hopefully it's not overwhelming. It's a lot of information, but it's literally a step-by-step thing that you get more and more confident each property you acquire and you look and, you know, I probably analyzed 40, 50 different properties until I bought my first one. So it takes time. To me, that's the beauty of real estate is it takes time, but also it removes a lot of that pressure.
Real quick, I want to talk about this. So monthly cash flow, this talks about ROI. It'll be super fast, I promise. But you can see the monthly cash flow amount, just like Levi just said. Most people buy it and get the check and then pay their expenses and they're happy with it. And then all of a sudden, bam, 30 years later, they're gazillionaires and everything's great. If that's how you're gonna do it, awesome, that's great. If you want to get super nerdy and maximize this stuff, this is where learning all the little details comes into play. So cash on cash return is the same thing as ROI. Your rate of return on the cash that you have put into the deal. You can see that there's negative cash flowing properties in here. Ultimately, this package, this is with management in place, it's gonna cash flow at 5.72%. So we talk about a stock market comparison, not as good as the stock market just on the cash flow. You go add in appreciation, tenant pay down if you have these financed, and you are gonna be above a stock market return. Without management, if you're managing this package yourself and you have it financed and leveraged at 20%, it's gonna give you right about a 10% return. So we're beating the stock market on our cash flow. And then you go add in appreciation and tenant pay down, you're gonna be looking really, really good. So you can see where our numbers are at as far as that goes. Does that make sense? Any questions as far as those numbers go? Good? Okay, cool.
Okay, I want to be
Go for
super
it.
respectful of your guys' time, so we're just gonna put a bow on this, and if you want us to teach another class, just let us know, we can do another deep dive. This was awesome for me, I'm really thankful for you guys coming out, but more than that, I feel like the Market Center as a whole at Keller Williams is committed to your wealth journey and what you want. I know we have some goal statements for 2025, so I won't let the cat out of the bag, but our goal for next year is gonna strongly resemble this strategy, so just invest in yourself, okay? So to put this in a nice bow, if Andrew was here, he would have come up with some sort of Morningside costs, let's say 112,060, right around there, okay? Amortized over 30 years at what percent rate, okay? So it's just a mortgage, right? We're gonna say somewhere around 800 a month, 9,600 yearly, which makes you cash flow Morningside at $2,841. So for all intents and purposes of today's class, is Morningside a good investment? Yes. Okay, so these are actually all for sale. Like he said, they're for sale as a package, they're for sale individually. If you would like more information on the actual individual addresses, so you can go drive them, and if you want to be like me, get with Trey and his team, and they will give you all of that information. If you have a buyer, or you want the package deal, he'll give you that too. Cool?
And if you have any questions too, feel free to reach out to
Yeah,
him.
I'll hang out down here for a little bit, so if
We're all
anybody
happy
wants
to
to
help.
chat, we can do that.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Have a great day.